Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this for a second. You did everything right. You saved for 30, maybe 40 years. You made the sacrifices. You skipped the vacations. You drove the old car a few extra years. You put money into that 401k every single paycheck without fail. And then the day finally comes. Retirement. You made it. But what if the very first year you stop working, the market drops 30%? What if it drops 40%? Because here is what most financial advisors won't tell you up front, and what Wall Street definitely doesn't put in a brochure. The timing of a market crash matters more than almost anything else in your retirement plan. Not how much you saved, not how diversified you were, the timing. And if that crash lands in your first 5 years of retirement, the math becomes brutal in a way that is genuinely hard to recover from. Welcome back to Senior Pulse US, where we talk about the real stuff. The things that actually affect your money, your security, and your peace of mind in retirement. I'm glad you're here today because what we're covering could literally be the difference between a retirement that lasts and one that quietly falls apart before you even realize what happened. So let's get into it. There is a concept in retirement planning called sequence of returns risk. It sounds technical, and most people's eyes glaze over the second they hear it. But stay with me, because once you understand what this actually means in plain terms, you will never look at your retirement portfolio the same way again. Here's the core idea. When you are still working and saving, market crashes hurt, but they don't destroy you. Why? Because you're not pulling money out. You're putting money in. So when the market drops, you're actually buying more shares at a discount. You ride it out, the market recovers, and you come out ahead. That's the whole stay the course advice that gets repeated over and over, and during your working years, it's mostly true. But the moment you retire, everything flips. Now you're not putting money in. You're taking money out every single month to pay your bills. Groceries, utilities, Medicare premiums, maybe a mortgage. Life doesn't pause because the market crashed. You still need that withdrawal every month, no matter what the market is doing. And here is where the math becomes almost cruel. Imagine you retire with $500,000. First year of retirement, the market drops 35%. You're now sitting at roughly $325,000. But it's worse than that, because you also withdrew $20,000 that year to live on. So you're actually down to around $305,000. Now, the market has to do something extraordinary just to get you back to where you started, and you're still drawing down every single month while it's trying to recover. Compare that to someone who retired 5 years later and got the good years first, same $500,000. But their first few years, the market goes up 10, 12, 8%. They're withdrawing money, yes, but their portfolio is growing faster than they're spending. By the time a crash comes later in their retirement, they've built up enough cushion that it doesn't sink them. Same amount saved, same withdrawal rate. Completely different outcomes, just because one person got unlucky with timing. That's sequence of returns risk, and it is not theoretical. It happened to people who retired in 2000, right before the dot-com crash. It happened to people who retired in 2007, right before the financial crisis. Real people who worked their whole lives and did the right things found themselves in serious trouble because the crash came in the wrong window. Now here's what makes this especially dangerous. Most people don't feel the damage right away. In year 1, maybe year 2, you look at your statement and you think, okay, this is bad, but the market always comes back. I'll just cut back a little. And so you start withdrawing slightly less. Maybe you tap into savings you weren't planning to touch. Maybe you put a big purchase on hold. What you don't realize is that each of those early withdrawals at the bottom is locking in losses permanently. Those shares you sold when the market was down, they're gone. They never get to participate in the recovery. By year 4 or 5, when the portfolio should be stabilizing, it's already been depleted to a level it may never fully recover from. And this is the part that people don't see coming. By the time it becomes obvious there's a serious problem, the damage is largely done. So what do you actually do about this? because I don't want to leave you just sitting with the fear of it. That does no good. Let's talk about real strategies. The first thing is something called a cash buffer or a retirement income bucket. The idea is simple but powerful. Before you retire or right when you do, you set aside 1 to 3 years of living expenses in cash or very stable, low-risk instruments. Money market accounts, short-term CDs. Something that isn't going to move with the stock market. That way, when the market crashes, and at some point, it will crash, you are not forced to sell your investments at the bottom to pay your grocery bill. You pull from the cash bucket. You let the portfolio sit and breathe and recover. This one move alone can dramatically reduce your exposure to sequence of returns risk. The second strategy is being thoughtful about your withdrawal rate, especially in those first 5 years. The standard rule of thumb is 4% per year, but that number has real limitations depending on your situation, your age when you retire, and what the market is doing. If the market is down significantly in your early retirement years, consider pulling back to 3% or even less if you can. Even a temporary reduction in withdrawals during a downturn can make a meaningful difference in how long your money lasts. Third, and this one surprises people, think carefully about when you claim Social Security. If you can delay it, even a few years, you're creating a guaranteed income stream that goes up every year with inflation and never runs out. That guaranteed income acts as a cushion. If the market is crashing, you're not as desperate to sell investments because you have that check coming in no matter what. It reduces your dependence on the portfolio during exactly the years when dependence is most dangerous. And fourth, talk to a fiduciary financial advisor about whether an annuity makes sense for a portion of your assets. I know annuities get a bad reputation, and some of that reputation is earned because there are bad products out there. But a well-structured annuity can serve a specific purpose. It can turn a portion of your savings into guaranteed income you cannot outlive, which again reduces the pressure on your investment portfolio during down markets. Here's the bottom line, and I want you to really hear this. The biggest financial risk you may face in retirement is not that you didn't save enough. It might not even be inflation, as real as that threat is. For a lot of people, the biggest risk is a bad market in the first 5 years, a risk that almost nobody talks about until after the damage is done. If you are within 10 years of retirement, or you are already in those first few years right now, this is not something to put off thinking about. The strategies exist. The tools are there. But they require planning ahead. Not reacting after a crash has already taken a chunk out of your life savings. At Senior Pulse US, this is exactly why we keep having these conversations. Because retirement should be what you worked for. Not a decade of anxiety watching a portfolio bleed out. You deserve to know the real risks, not the sanitized version. If this video helped you see something you hadn't considered before, share it with someone who needs to hear it. A spouse, a sibling, a friend who's getting close to retirement age. This is the kind of information that changes outcomes when people actually have it in time. Subscribe to Senior Pulse US if you haven't already. We put out videos every week that are built for people who want straight answers about money, retirement, and financial security. No fluff, no jargon, just real information you can actually use. And drop a comment below. I read them. Tell me, are you worried about sequence of returns risk? Are you already in those first 5 years of retirement? Let's talk about it. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.